Hello everybody and welcome back to yet another video. So I'm going to be doing this video ad hoc or on the go, so there's no real script here, so please bear with me. So on Christmas Day, some days ago, being December 25th, 2024, I was sent an email supposedly of a leak from Pelage Pharmaceuticals clinical trial participant, or of a clinical trial participant. So not the literal clinical trial participant, but this is supposedly the clinical trial participant who posted this somewhere on the internet. But anyway. Apparently, someone who's in the clinical trial for this drug mentions that after 48 hours, they got a tremendous amount of hair regrowth. Now, the picture is that of a phototrichogram, and the before and after photo suggests that there was some sort of regrowth, at least based on the context of the photo. Now, on that same day, I posted on Reddit my interview with Kintor Pharmaceuticals on GT229 and KX826. And if you haven't seen that already, please check that out. I'll probably be putting that in the description. But anyway, someone on that same subreddit post on Tressless, the user is named Volatility Lover, responded to me with this screenshot, and it was the same one that was sent to my email. Now, in this screenshot, Volatility Lover, they mention how they see the photo as a joke and how it's likely faked as a picture. And they also mentioned that they personally altered the photo themselves and rotated the first image so that it matches the angle of the second image on the right. Now, moving over to my Discord server, which you guys can find the link to in the description, some of the server members were speculating on the legitimacy of the photos. So, server member ZM made the point that he believes that these pictures themselves are real. However, he also criticized the Reddit user, the Volatility Lover Reddit user, for altering the pictures and rotating the one on the left so it matches the one on the right, along with adding before and after oval circles to make it appear as if it's the same area. Now, ZM was also able to find the original photos as well, so it was two sets of photos, right? Now, we have three photos, being photos A, original photo B, and the Reddit photo that was altered. So just to clarify again, we have three photos now that we're dealing with. Photo A, original photo B, and the Reddit photo that was altered. And it's apparent that these ovals were never there to begin with. So I should also note that the altered Reddit photo is based on the original photo B. So I'll be putting it somewhere on the screen, hopefully. So the implication here is that the Reddit user Volatility Lover added these ovals, and it might be the case that they also emailed me this photo. So if it was a new Volatility Lover, then, sorry, but that's just what the context seems to suggest here. So moving from that, ZM checked the Hair Loss Cure 2020 website, and it was there that the admin of the website mentioned how they got the pictures from some sort of Discord server, not mine, by the way, and that they talked to the person who supposedly was in the clinical trial and leaked the results. Now, this person who supposedly leaked their results and being a part of the PP405 clinical trial, their name is Chad, okay? We'll call them Chad Guy or whatever. Now, I saw this comment months ago, back in October of 2024, after another Discord user had sent it to me, but I thought nothing of it because there was no photo. But now, after getting these photos, I think it's fair to have this sort of discussion. Anyway, ZM basically pointed out how erratic this Chad person sounds and how they probably were part of the trial, but they likely didn't know what they were looking at. What annoys me is how this Chad guy claims that Pelage encouraged him to talk about why he joined the clinical trial and his experiences, but how he also got a slap on the wrist for leaking the photo. Now, the Chad guy claims that he got regrowth after 48 hours of PP405 application, so that's a very, very bold claim to make. We don't even know if that's the case, but there were some further assessments that were made on the server, on my Discord server. We'll get into that later. But if we look at the screenshot, we can see here that it says baseline 48 hours on the side. So at least this part connects the screenshot to this story that's being told on the Hair Loss Cure 2020, comment section. And hopefully I'm showing this on the screen. We have a screenshot of Chad saying this in some sort of Discord server. However, considering how we have the original photo as well as the altered one with the oval, other members on my Discord server were now free to investigate. So our other server member, Jonathan, used Inkscape to compare if the hairs and angles matched up in the original photo before and after, or the claimed before and after. So we're going to be looking at original photo labeled B compared to the Reddit post. Now, typically in these studies, when it comes to hair counting, there is a target area that is usually marked with some sort of tattoo. Then this area is reassessed and compared against itself, whether it's weeks or months later, so that the target area is remembered and focused on. So Jonathan essentially found that the comparison pictures in the original photo B were of two different areas, and likely the investigators were comparing different areas on the scalp. Now, this guy is clearly some sort of wizard and great along with many other people on this server. So when I saw this, I was really impressed. He also went on to calculate the width of the hairs as well and did some, rudimentary, calculations. So great. I love you, Jonathan. You're doing great work. This is some awesome stuff. And I wish to have you on the podcast one day. It would be really cool to, get you on and, talk about these kind of things. But anyway, Jonathan makes the point that there does not seem to be any tapered, newly growing hairs in the 48-hour image comparison in photo B. And his general conclusion, at least at this point in time, is that he isn't certain about the legitimacy of the photos in photo B, showing it to be ostensibly a before and after comparison. And then we have ZM agreeing, but then he shows another side-by-side photo trichogram from photo A and states that the two photos do look the same, and Jonathan goes on to confirm this using Inkscape. Jonathan comes back again and shows how the photo trichogram side-by-side in photo B isn't the same, and he now says that he's fully confident about his assessment. So finally, it looks like this was a simple 48-hour, topical application of some sort, where they had the guy put on PP405 on his scalp. Maybe it's PP405 or maybe it's placebo. I would assume they probably had the guy put PP405 on his scalp, but then they had him come back 48 hours later to just assess. It doesn't mean that there was some sort of hair growth that happened. They just wanted him to come back, 2 days later after the topical application to see what's going on. Maybe they weren't trying to look for efficacy. Maybe they were trying to look for signs of safety, right? So maybe the topical application of PP405, they wanted to see if there was any sort of allergy that was occurring on the scalp or on the skin. I think that's a fair assessment to make. And maybe as well as a secondary marker or endpoint, they were trying to see if there was any sort of efficacy there in terms of hair growth. So just to clarify and say this conclusively, it's likely that these photos are just showing, different parts of the scalp, whereas in photo A, it's of the same part of the scalp, but 48 hours later, but it's just some simple visit that the clinical trial participant is doing. It's not necessarily fully suggesting that there's a regrowth, right? And the sort of misconception that we're getting is mainly from that Reddit user, Volatility Lover, and whoever sent me that email of that same photo, trying to portray that within 48 hours, this was the regrowth, when in reality, when you compare the angles like Jonathan did, when you look at the photos closely, they do appear to be of different areas of the scalp. So it's not a before and after. The guy who was in the clinical trial likely didn't know what was going on and just made too many assumptions. But we like making assumptions here too. I like making assumptions as well, but that's whatever. But anyway, next I decided to do some research myself and look around the Pelage website. I found that they had an alternative website, and to my knowledge, I don't think anyone else pointed this out yet, so I'm going to give myself a pat on the back on this one. But yeah, I went to Reddit and I posted this particular picture along with their second website link. It's not a second website wholly, but it's a different web page that seems to be largely unlisted from the typical website that we visit. Now, they actually have a picture of what appears to be a follicle under the mechanism of action of their drug PP405. They show two pictures of follicles side by side. The follicle on the left seems to be inactive and white, whereas the follicle on the right is purple or blue, however you see it. Now, the follicle on the left is treated with placebo vehicle, so that means they essentially didn't get the active treatment. It could just be saline and water. It could just be water, right? And the follicle on the right is treated with PP405. And it seems as if there's some sort of cellular response that's happening which they say was noted within 24 hours. Now, this could be a reason why they wanted the original clinical trial participant that leaked his results to visit after 48 hours of application of their treatment PP405. That could very well be the case. Maybe they want to see if there's any sort of early signs of growth or any sort of early changes to the cellular structure that's occurring, whatever. Now, the view that we're looking of this follicle, of this sort of biopsy, this is a longitudinal biopsy that they're highlighting. Now, in this longitudinal biopsy, we're sort of seeing like a two-dimensional view of a 3D structure. We have to keep that in mind, where we have the longitudinal view of a hair follicle over here, right? This is the hair follicle you can clearly see, right? If you focus on the square that's being highlighted, along with the thing that's shooting out of the pore of the skin, that is the hair follicle. But also we have this weird thing over here on the lower right-hand side that I circled in blue. Now, to me, this is a hair follicle, but we have to, make some guesses about what's going on here, right? Now, originally when I saw this, I was like, oh crap, did this thing just grow a new hair follicle? Is it stimulating a new hair follicle? No, that's not the case, and I've clarified on my Discord server and in various other places. No, let's kind of level down the hype a bit. This isn't necessarily a new hair follicle that's been regenerated, but this is a top-down view of another hair follicle. So depending on how you cut the biopsy, right? First, we have a longitudinal cut, but then maybe there was in that process of cutting the tissue longitudinally, you had an adjacent follicle that was growing upwards towards, let's say, the camera, right? Upwards in that angle. So in doing so, you're going to cut the hair in half, where now you can see things like the cuticle, the outer root sheath, and so on and so forth. Now, what sticks out to me is that this seems to be a catagen hair follicle. So if we remember our hair cycles, right? We have the telogen phase, that's the resting phase. Then we have the anagen phase, which is the growth phase. Then we have the late anagen phase where things are slowly kind of tapering out, the hair follicle still growing. But then we have the catagen phase where the hair follicle has stopped growing and now it's preparing to go back into the telogen phase. So it sheds telogen. But then we have the intermediate phase where the hair follicle is going from telogen into resting, what we call quiescence, right? Dormancy. And this is called the kinogen phase. And then from there, it goes to the anagen phase once again. But we're seeing, in my opinion, essentially a catagen hair follicle that is being stimulated by PP405. And we can see that there's significant amount of activity or cellular activity, at least in the active hair follicle, the hair follicle that's currently active. You have this high concentration of purple. And I think that's supposed to indicate the lactate activity or the lactate dehydrogenase activity, depending on which they're looking for. And I only say this because of the studies that we've seen before with Dr. William Mallory, where he uses, I think, RCDG2843, another mitochondrial pyruvate carrier inhibitor, or he probably used UK5099, where when they were checking for its activity, they checked for lactate levels and as well as lactate dehydrogenase enzymatic activity. In any case, it showed a similar cellular response. So here, I don't know if this is a human hair follicle. If I had to bet, I think this is a human hair follicle that we're looking at, maybe in some sort of ex vivo kind of study. So when I say ex vivo, that means we're taking the hair follicle out of a human being and we're either, examining it in some sort of petri dish or we're grafting it into a rodent that doesn't have an immune system where we can kind of observe it on another organism, right? So if the rodent doesn't have an immune system, it can take the hair, it won't attack the hair follicle, and you can assess the hair in another structure, in another piece of tissue where it's getting sustenance, and you can see, how you can manipulate that human hair. It's just another way of studying human hair. But yeah, my conclusion was that this is a catagen hair being stimulated by PP405. But also, maybe I'm spitballing a bit here and making too many speculations, but if you look at this like weird structure, I'll try to highlight it in the video if I remember, but there's this like weird structure in the upper left-hand corner, and it seems to me like it's I don't know, this could just be tissue, or it could be signs of a telogen hair follicle. I'm just gonna say it's more so tissue, right? that we're seeing here, but I don't know. It could be a telogen hair follicle just based off of the other biopsy pictures that I've seen before that has somehow, you know, uh, retained some of this PP405 stimulation, right? So it seems to be darker than the surrounding areas, not significantly darker. Granted, there are other parts of this tissue that has some sort of purple staining to it, but more or less, it seems as if the cellular responses are largely held in this anagen hair follicle, as well as a hair follicle that I'm seeing here in the lower right-hand corner, being that sort of catagen hair follicle. Now, the reason why I call it a catagen hair follicle is that when you look at the photos here on the screen, you can see that the catagen top-down view, biopsy view of a hair follicle, has this sort of dark core to it. Now, if it was white in the middle, I would say that, okay, this is an anagen, growth hair follicle that was biopsied. But this seems to be catagen, but it seems to be responding to treatment or getting some sort of cellular stimulation that allows it to possibly proliferate and grow. So, all in all, my takeaway here is that this looks promising. Like, I'm not going to lie, this looks very promising. And it does seem like the hair follicle stem cells are, responding, are proliferating, are activating, and potentially we can get dormant hair follicles to kind of reactivate, right? It's like a kicker, it kickstarts, and these hair follicles can begin growing again, right? Because it is the hair follicle stem cells that are in the hair follicle bulge. I think they call it the stem cell bulge niche or whatever. It is that determines when the hair grows and when it essentially doesn't grow or when it's dormant or dies, right? So this is some promising, what seems to be ex vivo human hair follicles. Now, I tried to compare with like mice hair in case this is like a mouse, or a rodent hair follicle, but I don't really know if it is a rodent hair follicle. I'm going to be real with you on that. It could be, but I don't think it is compared to some of the other pictures that I've seen of rodent hair follicles. It could really just be a human hair follicle that's zoomed out after biopsy. And this is something that I wish more pharmaceutical companies did. I had an interview with Kintor, again, that I mentioned earlier. It will be in the description for you guys to check out. But in that interview, I kind of asked Kintor Pharmaceuticals, hey, do you guys plan on doing biopsies more to actually show that, let's say for KX826, it's getting to the dermal papilla and it's actually having its influences there, to actually show that GT229 is in the dermal papilla and it's actually having its influences there, or if it's actually destroying the androgen receptors, degrading them? That would be cool. But if this is what Palaz Pharmaceutical has done here, where they took a biopsy out of, let's say, that clinical trial participant that we were talking about before, who leaked his results. Let's say they put the PP405 on a scalp and they waited 24 hours and then they came in and then they biopsied that area where the application was held. And then they noticed, okay, before and after in the general area, where we biopsied one hair follicle there in the general target area before, and then after being the PP405 application, we noticed that in the after, we're having more stimulation of hair follicle stem cells. And if that's the case, magnifique. That's very nice. That's very cool. Wunderbar, as they would say in Germany. But that would be really cool if that's the case. So should we be excited about PP405? Yeah, I think there's some reasons to be excited. Not to, you don't have to be too depressed about these sorts of, drug news, right? Now, there are people who kind of take the doomeristic attitude and they'll sit down and say, well, we haven't seen a drug in 20 years, so what's the point? And then I saw some weird comments where people are complaining about the one of the co-founders. They were trying to make it some sort of political thing because one of the co-founders said in an article that they're focusing on the diversity, the patient diversity of the PP405 clinical trial studies. Now, let me just say this. This isn't a sort of woke, politically correct thing to do. And for those people who are saying, patient diversity doesn't matter when it comes to these, results and, clinical trials, that's very weird considering how, especially on Trestless, the subreddit, I've noticed a lot of people make excuses saying, well, these drugs only work on East Asians. But then they complain when, the pharmaceutical company is trying to make it a point of having a diverse patient population. So, what do you want? Do you want them not to do it? Do you want them not to have a sort of diversity in patient population? Is there an issue there? I think people are getting a bit too brain rot by the current political discourse that we're having today. Not to make this a political, video, but that was really, stupid and foolish of people who complain about that. But yeah, we're supposed to be getting results, at least according to the clinicaltrial.gov website on PP405, maybe when the study completes, being February 2025. As of right now, it's December 30th, 2024, of the time I'm recording this video. And if we do get those results, maybe I think it won't directly be on February 2025, but maybe sometime in the first quarter or the second quarter, we should be getting those results, of course. Now, ZM on my Discord server brought me to the attention. Apparently, there's some sort of summit going on in California called the Advancing Innovation in Dermatology. That's going on in San Francisco at the Hyatt Regency, January 12th, 2025. I don't know if I'm going to go there, but I could. One of the co-founders, Daniel Gill or Jill, I think it's Gill, Dr. Daniel Gill, PhD. He's the chief executive officer of Pelage Pharmaceuticals, and it looks like he might be giving some sort of an announcement. Maybe they have, an announcement here. When you look at the clinicaltrials.gov website, much of the study is completed in now, December 2024. So it could be the case that they'll have something to present by January 12th that suggests PP405 is A-okay. It's, it's showing some signs of efficacy. Hopefully it shows some statistically significant signs of efficacy, but also cosmetic, differences, significant cosmetic differences, such that you're having, let's say, a Norwood 3 get to a solid Norwood 1.5 or a solid Norwood 2, such that you're having the activation of dormant hair follicles in bald areas, or let's say even so, diffuse Norwood 6, right? That's a very severe, male pattern baldness, getting a sort of regrowth to Norwood 2, no diffuse, right? That would be amazing. But anyway, that's the end of this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And yeah, Happy New Year. We're going into this new year of 2025. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. And yeah, enjoy yourself. Anyway, see you in the next one. And be sure to join the Discord server. Bye, guys.